But guess what? After all, it's always yours. You can actually always do that. Even verses 4, you see all these things over the land and you read something else in our lives. We have to work for the Lord and not be so busy. There is always that.
It's a time to tell stories, so I'm going to tell a story. It's no deep theological discussion today. It's a story. We are looking at a story. I'd like you to, if you'd like to follow with me, turn in your Bibles to 2 Kings 4. And in the book of 2 Kings 4, follow along with us as we tell the story. Because it starts with once upon a time. You don't believe me? Okay. 2 Kings chapter 4, in my Bible says, one day. That's once upon a time. One day, the widow of a member of a group of prophets. Now, who was this? She was a pastor's wife. She was one of the group of prophets, and the prophet died, and she was left alone. Came to Elisha, or as the Hebrew pronunciation is Elisha. That's the Hebrew for Elisha. And what did he do? It says there, and cried out, my husband who served you is dead. And you know how he feared the Lord. You know how he was a good man. And now who has come? A shark. A creditor, says my Bible, has come and threatened to take my 2 sons as slaves. As slaves. Wow, wow, wow. So the custom at the time was if you couldn't pay your debt, then somebody from your family, usually your sons, would have to come and work for them. And they would stay working for them and serve them until, according to Leviticus 25, the year of the Jubilee. And then they were allowed to go back home and would be free. What can I do to help you? Elisha asked. Tell me, what do you have in your house? Now, it's interesting. This question, what can I do to help you? Elisha says, what can I do to help you? And when she says, she's just already said this creditor is banging at my door. What do you think she needs? Money. I need money. The person I said that knocked on our church door this week, what did that lady need? Money. She had some real debts to pay off. She needed money. So here we have a situation. I need money. And he says, how can we help you? What's he trying to say? How can we help you? Why doesn't he just pull out his big prophet bag of goodies and haul out the money, and pay and get her debt paid down? Isn't that what we as pastors should do? Whenever somebody comes to the church, I should just have a big bag of cash that Glenn doesn't have any say over. And I should just pay out, hand these dollar bills out. Is that it? The interesting thing is that he doesn't say that. He says, she says, what do you have? Nothing at all except a flask of olive oil. She says, I've only got this flask of olive oil now. I've got some extra virgin olive oil, Toscano. probably all the way from Italy. Yeah. But it's distributed by Costco Wholesale Corporation in Seattle. So, there it is. It does say here that it comes from the hills of Tuscany. So I believe it's genuine, right? It's the real stuff. But she takes that, and then the prophet tells her to do something. So Elisha says, borrow as many empty jars as you can. Now, why does he ask her to go through this laborious? Why doesn't he just pay and get it done with? Get it over with? By looking at her and saying to her, what do you have? Sometimes the Lord looks at us and we say, Lord, help me. It's like the Lord looks at you and me and he says, what have you got? You know, why does the Lord ask us that question? Sometimes I need to hear that question and think, because I think I've got nothing. I think I've got nothing. Has God given each of us a talent? Has he given us each a gift? And sometimes I just don't know what that gift is. And he says, think, because I want you to recognize the fact that you being poor doesn't mean you have nothing. Have you noticed poor people? Do they have something? When you take these things out to those homes and you walk to those dwellings or homes or wherever they are, they may be in a rental, they may be in a low economic housing unit or whatever the case may be. They've got something there. They haven't got nothing. Now, the nice thing is that here we can supply something for them. It's just a little token once a year. But this lady was desperate because she was ready to die. This is facing death with the sons. She says, all I have is a flask of oil, and my sons will be given as slaves. I've got nothing else to even live on. Let alone, if my sons go as slaves, maybe they'll feed them, they'll live, but I'm going to die. I've got absolutely nothing. And so God looks at us and he says, what do you have? Jan, what do you have? David, what do you have? Dan, what do you have? Chuck, what do you have? Linda, what do you have? What do you have? I was reading in the Bible commentary, it says God didn't just supply the need. Did you notice that? He did it through what she had, even though poor. What do you think that did for her self-esteem? It was good for her. She felt like she was contributing, doing something in the process. Listen to this Bible commentary there again. It says, unless this is done, unless we invite the person who is in need to participate in solving their problem, charity may pauperize. You know what a pauper is? Is someone who's poor. Charity may pauperize and do more harm than good. And do more harm than good. So, by just giving something to a person doesn't necessarily help them. It is by engaging them in help. Even if it's a matter of, I've got something for you in the trunk of my car, would you mind coming and helping me carry it out? And bringing it. So if you can't carry the big box, ladies, this afternoon, when you come to the house, ask them, say, I've got a gift here for so-and-so. And if you've identified them, would you mind coming to help get it out of the trunk of my car? Let them come and take it out of the trunk. Let them pick it up. Let them carry it into the house. And they participate in providing for their need. It's not a bad thing to involve people. And so it says there in verse 3, and Elisha said, borrow as many empty jars as you can find from your friends and neighbors, and then go into your house with your sons and shut the door. Why do you think the prophet said, you got all these cans and stuff, but don't have all your neighbors standing there gawking to see what you're going to do with all these empty stuff, shut your door. And then you take your one little flask of oil, one little bottle, and you pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each one aside when it is filled. And then there's something very interesting. Verse 5. So she did as she was told. Is that important? Yes. That we obey? Is obedience important in the Christian life? If we want God's gifts, there's something called obedience. God says, do this, obey. Reminds me of someone in Scripture that didn't want to obey. He was a very important officer in the army of the king of Syria. And he came to a humble prophet's home, but this prophet didn't even come out to greet him. He sent his servant, the same servant that this is talking about, Gehazi, out to go and tell him, go wash in that filthy, dirty little Jordan River, dip yourself 7 times. And what did this officer say? I'm a Marine. I don't do stuff like that. I'm an important guy in the army of my... Do you know who I am? Did he obey? Yes. He didn't obey. He didn't want to. Eventually. But at first, no, he didn't want to obey. This says, so she did as she was told. Even the recipient, especially the recipient of a gift from God, needs to obey. Needs to obey. Her sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled one after another. Can you imagine that? Pouring it in and it doesn't stop. Now, I sometimes like to watch one of these funny magic programs on TV. You know, the guy does something. Can't even remember what it's called. I haven't seen it for a while. But he pours in something and then it keeps on pouring it in and just keeps on. And the person stands and looks and they get so surprised. Where is this coming from? It just keeps going in. Now that's sleight of hand or magic or whatever that the guy uses. But this was no sleight of hand and no magic because the lady herself was doing it. The kids, her sons would, she was pouring it in and they were tucking away, bringing the next container, and mom was just pouring it in. It was just happening all this time. And her sons kept bringing jars. Soon, verse 6, every container was half full. What do you think would have happened to the oil if the sons said, okay, it's half full, it's enough, Mom, it's too heavy to carry, put it aside, and just filled them half full? What do you think would have happened to the oil? Bring me another jar, she said to one of her sons. There aren't any more, he told her. And then the olive oil stopped flowing, period. If the jar was not filled, it would have stopped flowing. Have you noticed that? You've got a gift. I've got a gift. If I don't use my gift, what happens to it? When you play piano and you practice hard and you reach a certain level and then you stop practicing for the next 10 years, what happens to that gift? I just have to stop riding bicycle for that amount of time and I know what will happen. It seems to go away. For those of us that are getting older, they say you lose muscle mass. We need to have a few weights in the home. I had an uncle I remember as a kid, I used to crawl into all places, just like our dog. They sniff out all the places of the house. I'd sniffed out things when we visited them. And I found out under double bed, there was 2 sets of dumbbells. And I saw those weights and my eyes went big and I thought, whoa, and I tried to see if I could lift it up. And I put them back under there again. But I always admired my uncle after that because that to me said, he's a guy who practices weights. He's a guy. He's strong. But if I don't keep practicing my way, stretching my muscles, stretching my talents, my gifts, what happens? They start to atrophy. They start to die. They start to get old and flabby, and I become weak and frail. It's not an easy thing. I need to keep my system going. And so the gifts God has given me, I need to use. The oil stopped flowing when there was no place to pour it. No more containers. When she told the man of God what had happened, he said to her, go do something with it. Oh, what do I do? I've got all this stuff. He says, go, sell it, and pay your debts. Go sell it. Get money for it. Go sell it. And you and your sons can live on what is left over. Remember, they were going to die too. They didn't have anything to live on. What is left over, you will have plenty. What an amazing story. That was the poor widow. Now it says again, once upon a time, in verse 8, one day Elisha went to the town of Shunem. Where was this town of Shunem? They tell us it was about 16 miles from Mount Carmel. Who lived at Mount Carmel? Apparently the prophet Elisha lived at Mount Carmel. So about 16 miles from where Elisha lived at Mount Carmel, there we find a woman. She's a rich woman this time. She's not a poor woman. It says over there that the wealthy woman who lived there, and she urged Elisha, come to my home for a meal. Now, you know what? Do you like having somebody invite you out for a meal? And when you start to wonder a little bit, or if you can come, and they urge you and say, you must come, we want you there. Does that sound a little better than, well, if you can't, it's okay? This lady urged Elisha, come on, come and enjoy my hospitality. I have a meal. I have it ready for you. Please come. Did she have a husband? It says there, and after that, whenever Elisha passed that way, he would stop in for something to eat. It became a habit. Then she said to her husband, verse 9, I'm sure this man who stops in from time to time is a holy man of God. Maybe she didn't have much conversation with him. Maybe the husbands, like in the culture of the time, talked more. But she starts to wonder who he really is. What job does he do? I wonder where he gets his money from. The way he talks, he seems to be a holy man of God. Let's build, she says, a small room for him on the roof. This was not only a wealthy woman, this was an entrepreneurial woman. She was proactive. She was a go-getter. She was, I've seen some ladies like that in our church. One of them has just planned this whole thing and suggested that we do this thing, you know. So yeah, these things, we're a blessed family or a blessed church when we have some people that are go-getters and they want to get things done. She seemed to be one of those further, far-reaching, thinking ladies. Let's build a small room on the roof. Furnish it with a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp. That's all. Then he will have a place to stay whenever he comes by. A little prophet's room. I love those places. You know, when we came here, and you know, when Bev and I came here, and we looked things over, and you decided whether you want this funny pastor over here. We came all the way from Bend, and some of you provided a little prophet's room for us, even though for some of you we had to shoo them, for some of you kids, we had to shoo them out of their rooms so that we could sleep there for the night. But what a blessing that was. Thank you. Thank you. That little upper room, that prophet's room, a place to stay whenever he comes by. So what happens? One day, Elisha returned to Shunem. He went to the upper room to rest. He said to his servant Gehazi, tell the woman from Shunem, I want to speak to her. And when she appeared, Elisha said, Gehazi, tell her, we appreciate the kind concern you show us. What can we do for you? Every person wants to return a favor. Don't you? I don't like to just receive. Doesn't make me feel good. When I can do something for you as well, it creates a balance of giving and receiving. I want to do that too. Don't worry, Kasha. You're going to become a preacher or sing like your mommy one day. So we appreciate the kind concern, but what can we do for you? Can we put in a good word for you to the king or the commander of the army? Can we put in a good word for you to President Trump or to the head of the army? Can we? I've got contacts in high places, huh? You know? Can we put in a good word for you? No, she replied. My family takes good care of me. Remember, she was a wealthy family woman. So apparently well taken care of. No problems. And of course she had a husband. So, verse 14, later Elisha asked Gehazi, what can we do for her? Gehazi replied, she doesn't have a son and her husband is an old man. Now notice, every time Elisha speaks to her, he speaks through his servant. Why do you think he did that? This was part of the culture of the time, that men don't just always speak directly to women. I know Jesus came in and he broke a lot of those customs, didn't he? He spoke very directly to some woman here, especially the woman at the well. And the disciples were so surprised. Oh, our master is talking to a woman. Jesus came to elevate the status of woman in that culture. But Elisha respects the culture because that's what was understood, and he speaks through his servant every time. And Elisha then says, when the woman said, call her back again, call her in. When the woman returned, Elisha said to her, as she stood in the doorway. There's a little glimpse, as she stood in the doorway. Again, it was a sign of respect. You don't just walk into a man's private room where he's staying. She stood respectfully at the door so that he could address her and tell her what he wanted. Next here, at this time, you will be holding a son in your arms, he says to her. Who's this lady? Is she of childbearing age? No, she was much older. Husband was older. She responds, no, my Lord. Why wouldn't a woman say yes? She says, no. Oh, man of God, don't deceive me and get my hopes up like that. What are you doing to me? You know it is impossible. I cannot have a child. My husband has had a vasectomy or something, you know. This is impossible. Don't even go there. Is anything impossible for God? Have you heard of Abraham and Sarah? Genesis 17, 18. Have you heard of Zacharias and Elizabeth in Luke 1, verse 20? And God just moves through the impossible to the possible. I'm wondering if there aren't people, maybe not one of the 15 of those boxes, but maybe there would be one who is really hoping, and maybe they don't even know this is going to happen. I don't know how well Melinda has informed them. That may just see that box that you're taking to them today as that gift from God that is coming at the right time. We're here in the middle of the month. We've just passed the middle of the month. And the month hasn't run out, but my money has. And there's too much month for too little money. But sure enough, the woman, verse 17, became pregnant. At that time, the original there is talking about the appointed time, the time that God had intended, the time of the meeting, the appointed time. The following year, she had a son, just as Elisha had said. One day, her child is older now. He went out to help his father, and they were working with the harvesters. And the harvesting time is the hottest time of the year in that part of the country. Suddenly he cried out, "My head hurts. Daddy, my head hurts." His father said to one of the servants, "Take him home to his mummy." That's the easiest thing a dad can do, right? Just take him home to his mother. His head hurts. His mom is sitting at home. Take him home to his mom. I've got work to do over here. So the servant took him home, and his mother held him on her lap. And it says, but around noon time, he died. On her lap, he breathes out his last. This little boy has this terrible heat stroke. Can that kill you? Yes. I hear it can. And he died. There was no emergency room to take him to. So what does she do? She takes his limp little body. She carried him up, laid him on the bed of the man of God, that special little prophet's room. She sent a message to her husband. What does she say? Your son has died. Come home. No, she doesn't say that. She sent a message saying, send one of the servants and a donkey so I can hurry to the man of God and come right back. Does she tell him what happened? No. Why do you think she didn't tell him that her son was dead? I'm wondering whether she knew her husband and knew that he would stall the process or just talk her away from going to the prophet. It's useless now. He's dead. Don't worry the prophet. It's 16 miles. Forget it. Something in the mind of a mother about her child clicks in. And all those times comes back, and those words come back that she said, oh, man of God, don't just lie to me now. Don't get me all excited for nothing and then crush my hopes. But God provided a child, the impossible. God, you have to respond to this. The ball is in your court now. Right? I think here was a mother who was not only desperate, but here was a mom that had faith in the God who once performed a miracle could perform it again. Her husband was maybe just a bystander. She was the one that was actively involved with this process. And so he, of course, asked, why go today? It is neither a new moon festival or a Sabbath. Those special times you called the pastor to come and perform a ceremony of some sort, to come and pray and have some sort of a service. But she said, what does your Bible say? Mine says, it'll be all right. It'll be well. It'll be fine. Do you know what the Hebrew says? One word. But she said, shalom. One word. Shalom. Peace. And that means it'll be fine. It'll be well. It'll be all right. Just one word. And she knew her husband would stop arguing with her if she said that. So she saddled the donkey and said to the servant, hurry, don't slow down unless I tell you. The Hebrew says, don't slow it down for me. I know I'm a woman. I know you should drive carefully I should drive carefully when my wife is in the car. She says to the servant, put your foot on the pedal on the metal, my friend. Don't you worry about going around fast corners for my sake. You go and get there the quickest you can. 16 miles on a little donkey. Have you ever gone in a hurry or tried to hurry on a donkey? Any of you ridden on a donkey? How does it work to go fast on a donkey? Does it work? It's kind of hard. Donkeys don't go fast. They don't like to go fast. That's not their normal fare. I mean, get a racehorse if you want to do that, but a donkey is not, okay. Anyway, off they go. She on her way here, on the way to Mount Carmel. As she approached the man of God, verse 25, at Mount Carmel, Elisha saw her in the distance and said to Gehazi, look, the woman of Shunem is coming. Must have had good eyesight. But wondered why she's riding on a donkey. You see dust flying, and he's never seen a donkey run like that. There must be something, be up his bonnet. There must be something that is just begging him on. What's going on here? And it says God did not reveal the reason to the prophet. Does God reveal everything to the prophet? He's still a human being. Here, God said, no, I'm not going to tell you why she's coming. You'll have to hear it from her lips. Verse 26, run out to meet her, he says to Gehazi, and ask, is everything all right? That was a custom of the time. Send a servant out ahead to find out everything is okay. Today we would just text it, right, Abby? We would just text it. Texting it would just happen by text. We would just text it. They couldn't do that in that time. So the servant had to go and do the texting by running out and go find out the news and then run back before she gets there. Can a servant run faster than a donkey? I'm not sure, but run out to meet her. Is everything all right? Same word, shalom. Is everything shalom with you and your husband and your child? Yes, the woman said, everything is shalom. Was that the truth? A blatant lie. Why does she tell a lie to Gehazi? I don't trust this guy. I don't trust the texting. I don't trust a medium to be the messenger between me and my source. I want to talk to the prophet himself. He is the man of God. I want to face him. I want to talk to him. And God didn't reveal to him. So he's standing there not knowing what this is all about. But when she came to the man of God at the mountain, she fell to the ground before him, caught hold of his feet. She fell to the ground and caught hold. Where in the Bible do you find somebody else who falls to the ground and grabs hold of somebody's feet? In the garden, Mary falls at the feet of the gardener, grabs hold when she realizes, when he says Mary and he recognizes, he grabs his feet. Why fall down? When you fall down, again, a custom of the time that you are bringing a very deep special request. You'll find that this happens throughout Scripture in the New Testament, Matthew 18:29, Mark 7:25, Luke 8:41, John 11:32, where Mary, for instance, after Lazarus has died, rushes and falls down at the feet of Jesus. Falling down at the feet of a person is a common custom of the time. When you have a real strong request, you may not fall down. You may grab the person's hands and implore them, looking anxiously into their eyes. But can you imagine how strong this custom was in that day and age? You fell down at the feet of that person. And if it was really serious, you grabbed hold of their feet. Otherwise, you wouldn't touch their feet. And so she comes down, she touches his feet, and all of a sudden, instinctive response. Gehazi is the go-between. What does he do? He's like the Secret Service when the president is touring around. And if you get too close to the president, what does the Secret Service do? Back off, sir. Back off. You're too close. Back off. What does Gehazi do? Here's this woman grabbing Jesus' feet. He goes down and he smacks her hands. How dare you? Back off. Don't become so touchy with my master. Know your manners, lady. Know your manners. So it says, Gehazi began to push her away, but the man of God said, leave her alone. Did Jesus say that to people that were saying, shoo these children away? He says, no, don't push them away. Bring them to me. Leave them alone. She, it says, is deeply troubled. That she is the Hebrew word nephesh, which means her soul, her being, inside herself. She totally, everything about her is deeply troubled or bitter. Does she have a reason to feel bitter and troubled and upset? Yeah, because I told you so. And then she speaks up and then she says, Did I ask you for a son? Did she ask? She didn't ask for a son. She was told by the prophet, here's a gift that will be coming your way. She didn't ask for it. Didn't I say, don't deceive me and get my hopes up? Verse 28. Is she mad at the prophet? She's deeply disappointed in the prophet. Then Elisha said to Gehazi, Gehazi, get ready to travel. The Hebrew says, gird up your loins. So take your long robe, your dress, whatever they wore in those days, and push it into your belt. Gird up your loins. Stick it into your belt. Get ready to travel, and travel fast. He gives Gehazi his staff. And he says what? Take my staff. Don't talk to anyone along the way. Go quickly and lay the staff on the child's face. Why does he say don't talk to anyone on the way? Because the custom, if you came from Africa, you would understand that. It's the same in the East. When you meet someone, the salutations take 10, sometimes 15 minutes before you actually say what you're there for. If you greet somebody, it's not hi, bye. This is American Western type hi, byes. They don't hi, bye in those countries. When you say hi, it's how are you, how's your family, how are they doing, how are your children, how are your grandchildren, where have you been recently, what's going on in your life. There's a real interest. A salutation is a real involved talking and listening and sharing time. He says, don't do that stuff. And the Lord has not told me what it is. He said, no, I'm reading the wrong place. Okay, don't talk to anyone. Go quickly and then lay the staff. Verse 30, and the boy's mother said, as surely as the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I won't go home unless you, Elisha, go with me. You have been the Lord's spokesman. You got me into this trouble. If you don't go, it's like God is not going with. Your staff is not good enough. Now, where did the staff play an important role? In where else was the staff an instrument of miracles? Moses, Exodus 4 verse 17. Yeah. What have you got in your hand? Staff. And that staff, throw it down, becomes a snake. You lift it up over the sea, it'll open up. And so it's a custom of a prophet. Yeah, the staff played a very important role in the Bible. And what happens here? Gehazi, in the meantime, comes back, verse 31, laid the staff in the child's face, but nothing happened. There was no sign of life. And he returned to meet Elisha and told him, the child is still dead. I did what you asked. Nothing happened. When Elisha arrived, the child was indeed dead. And can you imagine if you were Elisha? You go up into your upper room, you go there inside, and there on your bed lies this lifeless little body, little boy. I don't know, perhaps 4 years old, 3, 4 years old, just a little boy. And there he's lying, lifeless. And what do? When Elisha arrived, he saw him lying there. He went in alone, just the two of them, he and the child, and again shut the door and prayed to the Lord. Wow. Is there power in prayer? The staff didn't work. In the beginning of this year, January 6th, there was a young boy that was brought into this chapel, and he was demon-possessed. Now, if I at that moment thought, wow, what do I do? I don't have a staff. What magical thing do I have? Oh, let me take my Bible, and I put my Bible on him. Would that have helped? I don't know if it would. I doubt it. I don't think the Lord wants us to use even the Bible as a magical instrument. He's more interested in the contents of what the Word speaks. Remember, it is in the words that there is life, not just in a piece of paper. In the words there is life. And so it is in speaking the word that God gave freedom. So here we find the situation where he then realizes, well, you know what? I need to talk to the Lord, to Yahweh. Verse 34. Then he lay on the child's body, placing his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on the child's eyes, his hands on the child's hands, and as he stretched out on him, the child's body began to grow warm again. Now, why do you think he used this method? A little strange, isn't it? We would never have done this in this day and age, or think of doing this in this day of sexual harassment and everything, as you know. We wouldn't have done this. This doesn't sound right. My guess is that 1 Kings 17 and verse 21, where Elijah did the same thing. Remember the widow of Zarephath? Also a little boy that died, and he seemed to do this. Do you think Elisha shadowed him maybe? Or may have heard Elijah tell him the story? Because Elisha was Elijah's follower, progeny. He took over. He was the next prophet. I have an idea that he may have known, and he must have thought, if Elijah did it this way, my mentor told me this is the way he did it, maybe I should do it the same way. And he does it that way. The child's body starts to grow warm. Now what does he do? He gets up and he starts to walk back and forth in the room. And then he goes back and he stretches himself on the child a second time. And then all of a sudden this boy sneezes. Do you like people sneezing in your face? Remember, it says his eyes in the eyes of the boy, everything. He was totally on this young boy, and this boy sneezes. I think that was the most welcome sneeze in all the world. Probably sneezed right into Elisha's face. The most amazing, wonderful thing happens. Life returns after death. Then Elisha summoned Gehazi once again, speaks to her through the servant, and says, call the child's mother. What do you think the mother's doing while he's upstairs praying? She's downstairs, probably one big bundle of nerves, praying, anxiously waiting for the prophet to come down and give her good news. Eventually she hears Gehazi coming down. And where Gehazi was, I don't know, maybe he sat outside in front of the door. And when Elijah opened the door, he says, Gehazi, go call the child's mother. She what? When she comes up there, and when she came in, Elisha said, here, take, or as the Hebrew says, pick up your son. Yeah. Take up your son. Pick up your son. And what does she do? What would a mother do? She would grab her son and say, he's alive, he's alive. Wouldn't you? I would. What does this mother do? She doesn't do that. She doesn't grab her child. She sees her child's alive and she falls down at the feet of the prophet. And what does she say? What does she say when she falls down at the feet of the prophet? Bowed before him. She caught hold of his feet, was what she said in verse 27 when she was in a different situation, deeply troubled. Now she just falls at his feet and she bows before him. And my Bible adds the words, overwhelmed with gratitude. Overwhelmed with gratitude. Now that is not in the Hebrew. Those words, overwhelmed with gratitude, is not in the Hebrew. Your sermon title is not a Hebrew scriptural title. She fell at his feet and bowed down before him is all that it says in the original text. The newer translations sometimes add something in to explain the intent of what it means to fall down and bow down. What falling down and bow down means is to be overwhelmed with gratitude in this context. You either are distraught, like she was in verse 27, or very troubled. or you are, like here, overwhelmed with gratitude. That's what that means. By falling down at the feet, she says, thank you, thank you, thank you. Then it says, she took her son in his arms and carried him downstairs. How do you like that? What does that make you think of? She first says thank you, and then she hugs her son. In Luke 17, verse 16, there's a story of 10 people that are desperate because they have a death sentence over them because they have the dreaded disease of leprosy. The moment Jesus heals them, says, go, show yourself to the priest, you're healed, you'll be healed. As they went, they discovered that they were healed. What do 9 do? They first go and celebrate their healing. By then, they don't even know where Jesus is. One of them, and he was a Samaritan, first falls at the feet of Jesus. Before he celebrates the gift, he says, thank you. To me, this is just an amazing lesson of what gratitude is all about. Do we say thank you? Do we say thank you? Do we remember to say thank you? Is saying thank you important? Is gratitude something that is a gift of the Spirit? Is this something that God wants us to exemplify and show through our lives? I pray that this Thanksgiving will be a reminder to us that to say thank you, even before we receive the gift, is of utmost importance. So what is similar between the tale of two women, these two stories? The first one was the poor woman. The second one was the rich woman. She had a husband. She was blessed in many ways. God gave them both something to be thankful for. Did he give them macaroni and cheese dinner? No. And did he give them stuffing made from authentic focaccia? What did he give them? Stuff? A new car? He gave both of these people life. For God so loved you that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have. Do you have a gift? There's no better gift. Have you praised God for that gift yet today? Lord, as we bow our heads before you, as we think of the story or the tale of these two women, both of them grateful for the gift of life that comes from the life giver. May we, as we go through this time of thanksgiving, truly give thanks to you for the gift of life that you have given each one of us. And may we not spoil that gift. May we be obedient and participate in living out that gift, that we may truly, as we have been crucified with Christ, buried in baptism, and arose in a new life, may we truly live that new life because we choose it every day in Jesus Christ. Amen.